Hello, this is Podcaster Politics with breaking news. Cal, what's the breaking news?
Well, the anybody that follows the Canadian election will know that it's been closely fought throughout a large part of Canada. One of the ridings has recently been flipped, and we're talking about news that was announced yesterday, Friday, May the 2nd. It is with respect to the Milton East Halton Hills South riding, a new riding that was created in 2022 as part of the Canadian federal electoral redistribution. That riding is a mixture of urban and rural areas. It's west of Brampton, west of Mississauga, north of Oakville, and east, more or less, of Milton. So it's a mixed riding, which on election night it was announced that the conservative candidate had won. We've been able to get our hands on the official uh, certification document, and we would like to show you that to you at this time.
Whoop, there it is. There's a document.
Yes, and what you're seeing there is the result of voting. What happens is the unofficial results are stated on election night and announced usually on TV, radio, that sort of thing. And when the votes are very close, they actually do a certification of the results of the voting. And you'll see there that the Green Party polled 671, Gil Parm 32,101. And if we skip down to uh, uh, Christina Tesler Dirksen, you'll see she got 32,130. That's
Wow.
29 votes that separates the two major candidates on this election. And so as
Wow,
a
that's
result,
close. I mean,
well, it can't get really much closer. And if you look at that document as well, somehow the People's Party, I'm not even sure who they are, managed to pull out 472 votes. The NDP is way down in 1,034, and the Independent is 175. So there is rejected ballots 412. So the rejected ballots far exceed the margin of difference between these two candidates.
how would you
This,
get
of
so
course,
many rejected ballots? Are people intentionally uh,
I don't know.
marking them
I
up, or?
I I'm no expert in that, but I can tell you that this won't be the end of it. The uh, there's going to be a happy winner that's now a sore loser, and you can be sure that this will be going to the courts and it'll be recounted again. But that's how slim the margin is between the conservatives and the liberals, at least in this riding. It's very, very close.
Every
And
vote counts.
yes, but that's usually people don't look at it that way. They think, what's the point of voting? My vote doesn't count. Well, 30 people voting one way or another apparently made a big difference.
That's not a
The other,
lot.
well, the other issue that you may want to look at with this is these are the type of documents that most people don't see, and uh, what
So
it
how
does
did you
is
get your hands on
that's a state secret. The
it?
the the but what it is, it's a certificate of the returning officer, and uh, again, it's something that people can in Canada, anyways, can take some comfort in when you look at uh, the the type of controversy that goes around the American election and their votes, vote counting, screams of fraud and that sort of thing. So uh, we thought that we would just bring that forward so that Canadians can actually see how this
there,
is done, what the
there
process
were
is.
a couple of ridings switch in the last day. I think a Bloc Quebecois riding switched as well.
Yes, and the thing is, I don't have access, to that document.
Yeah,
But
neither do I.
again, the reason we're bringing this forward is I think it's important that Canadians understand what their election process is, and what first past the gate means when you're electing representatives.
Yes, but, well, three ridings make it a majority government if three ridings switched to Liberal, so it is significant.
Oh yes, yeah, no, and again, I mean, the result is so significant it's all over the news, but the, I haven't seen a reproduction of this document anywhere else, and so I think one of the things that we need to do is disclose to people not only the news but what is behind the news. What the result actually was. You'll see on CBC, CTV, and all these you know news outlets an announcement, but you often don't see what is behind the announcement. They don't have time to actually go and pull up documents and show them uh, to their viewers, and often they're behind a paywall, which means that you're not going to see what they're saying unless you actually pay to subscribe to that network.
And
So
close ridings all go, they're not official till a judge rules on them. There's, what is it, 0.1% difference in voting or something, and they automatically have to be certified by a judge
I
recount.
I I don't know what the percentage is, but I do know that this is so narrow that it definitely is going to go to a
Yeah.
judicial review. And again, if you look at the differences between what Canadians do and what Americans do, the Americans wouldn't even trust the judicial review. Like,
Right.
at least in Canada, we still have some faith in our system. I
Nobody
know in my
storming Parliament.
I know in my writing, the people that I know that attended and did the observations, they were all volunteers. You know,
Right.
they weren't getting paid, and they did this because they believe in the process.
Yeah, kudos to them. I mean, that's what Canada is a lot of volunteers trying to ensure a democratic process or as best as possible.
Yes. Now, in on the initial, uh, well, I'm not sure what some of these statistics mean, but they're saying that the uh, redistribution results from the past was very close as well. Liberals 41.71, conservatives 41.25% from 2021. So this has been a very, uh, I guess you would call it a bellwether riding. It seems to reflect pretty accurately the results of what happened across Canada.
Correct. Well, this is one time, though, this election, I think BC controlled whether there was going to be a majority government or non majority because they were the last ones to tally their votes, and it was significant.
Yeah, and again, yeah, the way, I mean, when you cover, whether you have a country that covers 4 or 5 time zones, it's people know the result before they go to the poll. So it's interesting that the far west this time determined who was going to be the prime minister.
Should we talk about uh, Poilievre wanting to
I think
run
we
in the new riding here in Alberta? I mean,
well I
he was punted from a riding that he represented for over a decade, and in my understanding, he didn't do a whole lot for that riding. He was clearly voted out by the people that he has represented, so they would know him best of all. And they sent a clear message to the Conservative Party. They did not want to vote that leader in. And here we have him going to a strong rural riding just southeast of Edmonton where he figures he's a shoe in to win. I mean, holy man, Smith country or what? And,
I
like, I don't
I
think
I
that that's.
I, I think, to be fair though, what happened to him was that they jammed the ballot. They had, uh,
91?
yeah, 80, uh, 91 candidates on the ballot. In other words, you would have to actually look to find him, and
Well, they're
you would.
talking that doing that in this Edmonton riding that he wants to run in. Actually, the that other conservative leader wants to run in that riding as well. To once, what's his name? Uh, I can't even remember his name. That's how popular he is. But he wants to run against them to show that his conservative split party might be a better alternative for the federal conservative party. So uh, that could be interesting. If he runs in that riding, there might be a few more people step up to run against Poilievre, whatever PP.
I,
So
I, I think it's an interesting stunt, but I think one has to be careful in cheering, that type of activity. The longest ballot committee intended to make the ballot so long that you couldn't pick out a particular candidate, and in particular, they aimed at the conservative leader. And I, I, I think when you're playing dirty tricks in politics, you're opening yourself up for abuse. So
well,
I, I,
it's
I,
everyone's right to run. If they want 1,000 candidates to choose from, it's everyone's right to put their name forward. I mean,
oh yes,
I would put my name forward in Poilievre's riding where he's going to run in Alberta because I think he was already given a mandate. He left Calgary to get elected out east. Out east said, hey, um, we don't want you, and now you're coming running back into the province where Ralph Klein said Eastern scum and bum, hey, get out of here. So I mean, you got a guy living in the east running back to Alberta to get elected in Klein Country. I find that very hilarious. And I think
and
it says a lot for Alberta if we elect someone like that in. It means we really haven't been paying attention to politics.
well, I think in Alberta, people will just go down the list and look for the PC candidate, and if you ran a cat, the cat would win. So I don't think that's going to be an issue in Alberta, but I think um, the the idea that you intentionally interfere with the ballot process in order to confuse the voter is harmful in itself. I
Well,
agree that everybody has a right to run, but the concern will then become that if this became the norm, where there was 91 people on every ballot across Canada, sooner or later the government would come up with some kind of entry fee where you're not getting your name on that ballot unless you pay 10 or 15 or $20,000 or
well, there
something
already
goofy.
is an excessive entry fee.
There is, and
So,
that's at the candidate level, where
but people have to take responsibility for their own actions. If you got 90 candidates, they're all alphabetically ordered, so you must know the name of the person you're going to vote for in
good
that
point.
party that you want.
Yeah,
So why should we be looking at changing policy to
that's a
deal with
very good point.
somebody that can't go through the alphabet? I mean, are they really paying attention to politics, or are they going off of rhetoric if they can't even check the alphabetical order of the names? So,
Yeah,
uh,
from that perspective, it's a minimum test of
IQ.
your yeah,
I,
but
um,
but
to make mockery of it, it's if you're whining and crying that you had 91 names against you and your supporters couldn't find your name. Were they really your supporters if they can't check an alphabetical listing? I mean, I
and
know
when you're
there's a degradation of our education system, but have we got to the level of the U.S. yet, where our education system is one of the worst in the world? I don't think so. I think we all
and
know how to do alphabetical checking.
Well, and not only that, I mean, it wasn't like he wasn't on the news 10 times a day, every day for, the last 6 months.
Right.
So, yeah, if you can't pick his name out of the list, you're right. You're really not paying too much attention. But
Yeah, so that point is mute. 90 or 1,000 contestants, it doesn't matter. It's all alphabetically ordered, and you would presume you know the name of the person running. Otherwise, you're blindly voting for just a party name that you heard on the news, which means you probably weren't really following what was going on in the election. So you
it
might
would,
not
it
even
would,
be really aware of issues. But one of the things I
but
found is we didn't really cover any issues in this whole election other than, hey, we got to deal with Trump. Well, okay, but nobody really laid a formula to dealing with Trump. I mean,
well, one of the,
first off, he's a convicted felon. He's never allowed in Canada, and no exception should ever be made to allow a felon and a sexual assault predator ever to come to Canada. Then add on top of that Vancouver towers and Trump towers. I mean, there was a fraud lawsuit where
yeah,
maybe
but
there's
Cory, I think the best way to sum it up is what's the difference between Polyev and a toilet. And, and,
let me
and
guess. I can't figure that one out. What is it?
the toilet has a seat.
Yeah,
So, so,
exactly.
so, so the next thing is he's going to shop the country for a seat, and whether people like to think about it that way or not, Alberta is the safest seat for a PC candidate right now. I don't even, without looking
What
at
did
the
it
results.
cost to get that guy to step down? I mean, there's a price to be paid. What was that price? Disclose it to the voters. What are you paying to have your bosom buddy drop a seat so you can be the leader? I mean, that I think should be full disclosure. Um, I really find that amazing that somebody just walk away out of the goodness of the heart and there wasn't monetary concessions and job promises and lining of their pockets for that action. So that in itself tells me there's some dubious in the background of the leadership components of the Conservative Party.
But when you're a lifelong politician and your entire goal in life is to become the top dog, and all of a sudden now you've been shut out. And 6 months ago, you were a shoo-in. Like there wasn't, you were leading at the polls. There wasn't a chance that you were going to lose.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now you're you're flipped. Now, do you hang in for another 4 years and hope that you get another shot at this, or do you realize that your lifelong ambition is gone, and maybe look to a premier's job? Like, maybe Premier of Alberta would be a better position for him. And if you look at the Alberta
Don't
results,
pass him off on Alberta. I mean, I live
there's
in
only well, that's
Alberta,
where he's
thanks.
from. There was only two Liberals and one NDP elected in
Yeah,
Alberta. So I mean, it's perfect country for a guy like him.
I guess. Yeah, but back to the Trump effect. I mean, down in Australia, they had a mega liberal party, and when Trump announced he was supporting them and stuff, with the whole thing like Canada changed, so the existing prime minister got reelected, and that was the Trump effect. Anybody sided with Trump in a democratic country got voted out, and that's probably a good thing. So, I mean, Poilievre or whatever, he got defeated because he sided with Trump and then tried to cover up his allegiance to Trump. It's like Smith going and kissing the ring. I mean, there's a strong MAGA component in Alberta, and they've just isolated which riding has probably got the strongest MAGA component, and that's where they put PP in. I mean, that's pretty much sums up Alberta and the allegiances, I would think, but I could be wrong. But
Yeah,
prove me wrong.
I, I'm not sure the about the Trump effect. I'm disappointed though that the candidates didn't get around to discussing what policies were other than obviously the big threat, which is tariffs. But somebody sent me another joke, which I thought was quite funny. Canada elected a guy with a PhD in economics from Oxford University. Mexico elected a woman with a PhD in energy engineering. The US elected a 2 times impeached con man who bankrupted 4 casinos and has 24 felony convictions.
Yeah, hilarious,
And
you
and
know.
and I you know I how could you ignore the elephant in the room, and that's Trump and tariffs obviously, but it's
Yeah.
and you know when you look at the candidates, it's kind of hard not to look at their background with respect to the economies and economics, and it doesn't get any better, you know, than a guy with a PhD in economics and who sat, as chairman of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. So
He's
it's
definitely what Canada needs in this time, and he,
one would hope.
yeah, one would hope, but politics is corrupted at some form. So
Well, we
hopefully he does what he says he can do, and I have to thank the East for making sure that we are protected here in Alberta, because without Carney in power, I think Alberta would have been losing a lot of our energy resources to Texas, where we would have been paid pennies on the dollar. I mean, we were already paid pennies on the dollar, but it would have been even worse, and Smith might have sold us out to the U.S. interests even to a higher scale than we are being sold out right now. So
and there's some political scandal going on behind the scenes, which Canadians, of course, never get exposed to unless you're actually running as a candidate. And in particular, there's several ridings in the Toronto area where candidates had put up the money to run in the riding. They had been essentially promised that they were going to be a shoe-in, that the party was going to support them, and they were offered advantages like $50,000 donation brings Poilievre into your barbecue, which of course would attract the media and the attention and would assist in getting
so
votes.
this is a
Uh,
conservative party.
uh, yeah, and
Oh.
and and what happened eventually is that they parachuted in a candidate that essentially blew out a candidate that thought they were the front runner for the seat, and so there's some fairly several bitter and twisted candidates out there that may or may not be bringing litigation against the Conservative Party. First of all, it's difficult to come up with a style of cause. Uh, for example, uh, was it negligent misrepresentation? Where you promise somebody that if they pay $50,000 and throw their hat in the ring, they will get the support of the party and they'll win the nomination, and then pulling the rug out from underneath them. Like what is your cause of action? And it's an interesting problem. Now I understand that these individuals are bent and twisted because they didn't get their job with their potential guarantee of a lifelong pension, and not really a heavy workload. So they're not happy campers. They thought they bought their
But doesn't that say
nomination.
more about the management and the running of the party?
Well,
If they, in behind the
it,
scenes, are being that manipulative, would you really want them running your country and your,
well, of course it
billions
does.
in bank
But
accounts?
but here's the problem: the truth of the matter won't come out unless these people decide to actually sue. And the position that they're in right now is they're waiting to hear what the goodies will be before they decide to take legal action. In other words, if the party, yeah, if the party's going to give them a nice position someplace that keeps them happy, then we won't see what is actually going on behind the scenes. And unless they're prepared to step forward and complain, it's going to be difficult for the average person to get a view of that, what is going on in the back room,
Well, then
and
that's
how.
not good. That's not good because that should be more public in a democracy. Some of these backdoor deals to cover up dubious behavior. I mean,
Well,
what?
the question was, and when it came to light, of course, was prior to the election. So the question became, if the litigation was commenced prior to the litigation and became public, what would the effect of that have been on the election? And
Devastating, I would imagine.
uh,
It boils down to
potentially,
the root of credibility and honesty. So, um, isn't it obligatory that this be full disclosure during election? Like, shouldn't our news coverage cover such articles?
well,
I mean,
there
journalism is
was
supposed to be about fair coverage.
well, there was a brief article by one of the individuals, but here's the other side of that problem. If you were to do this, does that hold you out for election interference? In other words,
Oh God.
yeah, because you know in advance what the effect is going to be, and you know exactly there's going to be some kind of political repercussion someplace, and so uh, these individuals, as far as I know, um, are essentially waffling. They want to do something, but more than likely they want their money back. Is what
Yeah.
they're not. They never were interested in politics for politics to begin with. They were
For
interested in
money.
buying themselves a job,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we hold out to a lot of, I hate, to a lot of people in general, but new Canadians in particular, the experiences that they bring from their home countries is that you can buy a position like this.
Yeah, well, I
So
mean,
so
it's true.
so they become easy marks for the political fundraiser that's looking to generate income for the party, but has no interest in that particular candidate. And it's a huge potential story, but the problem is, will it or will it not break is a question.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're breaking it a bit here. The other issue is now that the Liberal Party federally only needs 3 seats to be a majority, what are they going to offer 3 candidates from the Conservatives or the Bloc to walk across the aisle? I mean, there's going to be some minister jobs floating in the conversations. There's going to be some money and promises of prestigious job appointments if they cross the floor, and
It
three
doesn't.
people three people across the floor. I mean, all the liberals have to do is go to a close riding like we were talking, that a conservative won by under 100 votes, and say to the guy, well, hey, we'll guarantee you a minister's job. That'll give you a good chance of getting reelected next time, and you might not win the next one because it was so close a riding. So maybe you should take us up on your offer. So, I mean, there's going to be some backdoor politics. Carney's pretty wise. He knows that money motivates, and they're probably
I
going to be 3 seats crossing the floor.
I'm betting he stays right out of it. He's not that type of political animal, but he has people in the back room
Oh
that
yeah, he won't be doing
are,
it. It'll be
yeah,
other people making the
yeah,
offers.
you're going to go to somebody, and I believe most likely the most vulnerable candidates for this kind of suggestion are definitely the NDP, because if they're no longer an official party, they're going to lose all the perks that go with that. The research, the office space, the talking points. Everything is going to change for them, and it's not too big a pill to swallow for an NDP supporter to back a liberal, especially if the liberal is now sitting in the government that's actually in power. So I'm betting it will be an NDP candidate that crosses the floor,
I won't
and
bet against you on that one. I'm pretty sure
and
it
I'm
won't be
betting
a green.
and I'm betting all it'll take is a better office,
Yeah,
and a guarantee of support staff. Like
yeah.
it's not gonna take much. You know,
No, so there'll be some
they've got
breaking
seven
news
seats.
on that within the next couple weeks, I'm sure. They'll probably wait to see the judge results on all the close ridings and then do their backdoor politics.
Oh, I bet you they got somebody in mind. They've got half a dozen. There's
Oh yeah,
there's seven NDP candidates to choose from.
yeah.
So it's not a big pool, and I bet you they've already decided where they're going. And when you look at a map, uh, what's of interest is you've got two in Alberta and one in Saskatchewan. Uh, so if you were thinking regionally, you would elevate somebody from Alberta or somebody from Saskatchewan to offset, the massive landslide of PC candidates.
Good point.
Give.
Maybe Carney should hire you as a consultant. I
Oh
mean,
no,
he
they're way
probably
ahead of
hasn't
us.
thought of that one, getting
Good.
the NDP out of Saskatchewan and Alberta to turncoat to Liberal. That would be a good one.
Oh, no doubt about it, right? Although the things just flipped here on me. The Saskatchewan has one Liberal; it doesn't have an NDP at all.
Oh, it doesn't?
Manitoba's
Oh,
no,
Manitoba does.
Manitoba's got the one NDP here.
Oh, okay. Well, Manitoba's still the West. It'd be nice to
Yeah.
be a Liberal. Yeah, those are good points. I mean, the NDP probably would be more benefit to have three people walk across the floor, or maybe four, to ensure there's one extra. And yeah, we're going to have some pretty good hot takes, I think, within the next 2 weeks on that issue, and maybe we can discuss that. I think we've pretty well covered everything today, Cal. So I think maybe we should call it a day. So
Nice
remember
talking to
to
you.
subscribe, write your comments in the comment section, and share this podcast as often as you can. Thank
And
you.
if you've got any interesting insights someplace, and you want a place to air them, send them through to us, and we'll have a look at them. One of the problems that we have in today's news world, in the information world, is that some people have information that they cannot get out. And you know, uh, one example perhaps is the notarized certificate of the election result. Most people would never see that because I don't believe that's going to become a public document on regular news media. Nice talking to you.
Nice
Have a
talking
good
to you.
day.
Take care.
Bye.